Live from Kevin Corkum's pornography studio. It is the Brand DIY Expert Series. Kevin, how are you?
I'm good, Mark. How are you?
I was blown away. I was blown away. You have the coolest backdrop I have ever seen, and it's not one of those fake backdrops. That is literally your porn studio.
Well, that's exactly it. Funny story to start is my wife had a friend over, a female friend, and she
That's
wanted
how
the
porn
house.
studios always start.
That's exactly it. And she wanted the house to herself. And I was going to go camping. And in this weather, it dropped below zero. So I said, screw that. And she's like, you can't sleep in the house. So I dragged a mattress out on Friday night. And so Monday morning, I have a meeting and I see the person looking in behind. And so not only do you see the soft box, but there's a mattress laying there. And I'm like, no, I swear to God, no porn, no porn.
And we don't really have to have a conversation about anything brand DIY. We can just talk about this. This is hilarious. All right, Kevin Corkum, you and I met not through business. We met through a dating site.
Speaking of porn, yeah.
Yeah, speaking of porn. No, we didn't meet through a dating site, but we were both working at Telligence on related projects. Telligence, for the folks who don't know, are the folks that invented live links. So literally one of the first hookup things in the whole wide world. And we worked out of their offices. I had no idea what they did. It looked like an accounting firm or something like that. It was hilarious.
Legitimacy was tough.
Yeah, I know, but it was awesome. And that's where I first met you. And that goes back like 10 years or something like that.
Long time.
And then you and I worked at did the Pixel Union thing.
That's exactly
where I was helping fix their brand and you were running the company for a while. And now you moved to Victoria or just up island a little bit. And so you're a recent immigrant. And now this is actually a barn that you've converted, right?
That's exactly it. Yeah. So I'm in a 2,000 square foot barn and I built a 400 square foot studio. We do, as an agency, we started off focusing on coaches and now we're purely e-commerce and products. But the original idea was you come stay for the weekend. We would shoot all of the promo videos for your Facebook, ads. And then we would do it all in-house right here. And it just, turned out it was, So.
And everybody
better as my office. So
everybody who's watching from New York City and San Francisco, yes, you can do this. You can move to the island and live with us and live in a barn, dress it up as a porn studio. I don't care.
That's exactly it.
Doesn't matter, but you can do it. You can come join us. We're welcome, and we like lots of people. We like people. So, so now. You've got a new gig, which is very interesting. And I want to just backtrack. Yesterday, we had Rob Bennett of Viatech on the show, and we were talking about how entrepreneurs who are just out of the gate make the same brand mistake over and over, which is they don't figure out if what they're making is what people want to buy. And are they positioning themselves right? And there's methodologies. Rob pointed out there's a guy named Steve Blank. Turned out I already had his book. I'd read it before, totally blanked on that. Haha. And his book was called The 4 Steps to the Epiphany, which is all about product market fit and customer, like how you figure out if what you're building is what people want, and iteration. And we ended the conversation by saying, you know what's weird is that mature companies that are successful, don't do this. And I asked it, and he said, yeah, it's true. Companies don't tend to do this. Once they're making money, they don't think about this. They just keep plowing forward. And we finished off the interview, and you had a comment right there on Brand DIY. Goes, hey, I just thought of something. I'm doing this stuff for mature companies, and I want to talk about this thing. So I said, well, let's book a call right away. And here we are one day later. And I want to talk about what you're up to with your new company, Socially Affluent. What do you do? What are you up to?
Yeah, thanks. So Socially Affluent Studios traditionally is a Facebook media buying agency for e-com. And no surprises. You have a product, you want traffic, we design the whole thing and send the traffic to your website, everybody makes money. And so what's interesting is and I loved the talk yesterday, because when we started to branch out, I used to teach lean methodology at an accelerator. And so talking to new entrepreneurs, especially when they're walking in and they're like, I don't know anybody, but here's exactly what I've built or I'm going to build. And I was always like, look, if you want to make money, you can build it and then sell it. But there's also the option to try and sell it to see if it's worth building it. Everybody who started out as an entrepreneur has a either physical or digital shipping container filled with bad mistakes. And so if you've got to find the customer anyways, do it first, right? And that's what you guys talked about it, and I love.
Yeah.
And so when you mentioned, the tune-up and the mature businesses, and I was like, oh, I've got to talk to Marc because that's where I'm slightly pivoting. Mm-hmm. When we do like our lead gen funnel as an agency, of course, we only want people that are currently on Facebook, that are currently have sales, and everything is working, and we can just help them scale. Well, guess what? Do you know what percentage of businesses fit that checklist?
About 1,000,000%.
It's really small. And
what? So, no, really? I thought it's huge.
No, it's tiny. It's tiny in terms of all of the businesses out there marketing on Facebook. And so what happens is, say I book 10 calls in a week, 9 are just not very good. And it's not the schemers and dreamers that, want to start a business. It's people that are like, I have had this business and I'm not making money on Facebook. The agency is screwing me. Can you help? And so I had started to design this whole ad process for our agency saying, hey, guess what? Your ads aren't working. It's not your agency's fault. Prove me wrong. Because what I could see every time is the problem is always product market fit, even on businesses that are 10 years old. As they're going online, they're trying to develop an indirect audience on Facebook, and it's not working. And they're always assuming it's the audience. And I'm like, no, even look, it's not even my account. And I'm telling you right now, what the agency's working with is crap. They can't do it. You don't know who your customer is.
Now,
all the time.
Let's backtrack, because to get into this, I want to talk about lean methodology. You are, you have a long history in lean. When I brought up Steve Blank's book, The 4 Steps to the Epiphany, he was actually one of the folks who was involved in building out the whole lean thing for entrepreneurs. Now, in our pre-call talk, I said to you, I bet with the lean methodology that 80% of the people listening to this show have used that term, thrown around a cocktail party a bit, and have no idea what it means.
Right.
So talk to me about product market fit, finding the right audience, and lean methodology. How does it all come together?
Got it. So when we look very briefly at the inception, it's Toyota. And the example is Toyota versus Ford. Toyota builds a really expensive factory that can do many things on demand. Ford builds a really cheap factory that can do one thing many times. So if you want a green Ford F-150, Ford can make them really cheap. Toyota has always, since the 80s, been able to maneuver based on demand. Hey, nobody's buying the Tundra, but a lot of people are buying the Tacoma. Their factory can swap. And so while their initial costs are more expensive, they're able to meet consumer demands is much quicker, and hence the quality. So that's the inception, right? So when we take lean methodology, minimum viable product market fit, customer discovery, all it is kind of coming with the viewpoint is, I know you love what you're doing, but there is a 42 out of 43% chance that it is going to fail. And so it's not about trying to be successful. It's about failing, AKA learning, as quickly and cheaply as possible. So have I made $1 million based on lean methodology? Maybe. Have I failed 12 to 15 times for less than $5,000 each time? Absolutely. And that, from a multiple entrepreneur, that's success. Anybody can have a runaway success, but most of us will fail 42 out of 43 times. So how can we do it before we get broke, exhausted, and bored? And that's the fundamentals behind that.
Yeah.
And so what we know is we know that unless Mark, you're a market expert in exactly what you do with brands. You can make some core assumptions based on your years and years and years of experience. But at its fundamental step, as you move into brand DIY and you're working on this and you're working with a digital audience and you're working with a young entrepreneur, there's a lot of the things that with lean, all we're listening for is, oh, does he know that for a fact, or is he operating based on an assumption? And if it's an assumption, how do we build a test or an experiment for that to validate that assumption and learn from it?
And that leads us right into socially affluent. So I am a moderately successful entrepreneur. We're selling stuff, we're doing okay. And I am not sure, because every entrepreneur, they're always wondering what's not working. And so they have a conversation with you and you say, we could do a tune-up. And they go, what does that look like? So what does that look like?
Yeah, so typically we walk people through about an 8 to 12 session process. It's one-on-one. And then we go through all of the typical areas. Now we're purely digital, we're purely online. So it's really like, okay, let's do first an audit. How's everything working? And guess what? Here's the first problem. We can't get people's numbers because they never even know their numbers. What's your conversion rate? What's your average order value? What's your lifetime value? How many website visits, unique visits do you get on the day? Even companies that are almost purely digital online, those should be tip of the tongue.
Wow. And nobody knows that. Hey, I'm not surprised.
No, but it's, because I got a guy, right? I got my web guy installed all this stuff. All I know is what I pay per month in Facebook bills, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest. And I know how much I'm spending on my product. I don't think I'm making money. And so one of the modules we actually had to introduce recently is, let's go back and do some accounting math. How much is it actually costing you to make the product before you do anything? What's your basic cost of goods, right? In the pure digital world, what's lovely is, well, it's kind of zero, right? Mm-hmm. So, if you take out your labor, so coaches, lead generation, they have a different relationship with the online model, because if they're like, well, if it costs me $1.90 to make $2, as long as I get enough sales, it's worth it to me. Mm-hmm. E-com, there's a ceiling, right? And so, we'll always say, expect it to cost about 25% to acquire the customer. If that's too expensive, you probably shouldn't be selling online.
Huh.
Right? And
okay.
So then
right away, I've worked with a lot of clients, and honestly, I have never really thought to ask that question.
I know.
And they have, I'm sure that if I would have asked it, even with some of the digitally savvy ones, I bet you they wouldn't have had the answer. It's so obvious. You put that thought in my head and it's so obvious in hindsight.
Well, and so it's funny because when we dig into the numbers fundamentally, so this bottle sells for $19. You probably only paid $14 because I know you, right? But I paid $19. It probably cost $4 to make. And so when you think about it, you're like, okay, through the entire sales, marketing, and profit process, I have about $15 to play with. But when we get into e-com, we've got a lot more options. Yes, I paid $19, right? So if it cost me $20 to acquire the customer, if I'm selling this bottle and the customer comes and buys this for $20 and it's a $19 bottle, I'm losing money. Maybe. Right? Maybe. How many bottles did I buy in that one order? That's my average order value. So yes, it cost me $20 to send the customer to buy this bottle. Is the problem that it cost me $20, or is the problem that I walked away only having spent $19? And where it gets even more confusing with the lifetime value, I spent $20, or sorry, I guess I can't be in both of these equations, right? Yeah. But as the consumer spent $19 and you spent $20 to acquire them. Your average order value is way too low. But how many more times am I coming to your website? Because it's not going to cost $20 in the future if you have done a really good job capturing my information. Have you got my email address? Am I on your newsletter? Does your newsletter or does your email automation sequence, does it actually sell? So Mark, here's a number one tip for everybody. I know right away when you're sending out an email, you're talking too much about you. So, and at the very end, you kind of say, please buy this. If you take that from the bottom and move it to the top of the fold, I promise you, your revenues will skyrocket instantly as a percentage.
Really? Well, you know, and that takes us to another, this is something that I see every single time. And actually every single time. When I am working with clients, one of the first things I usually notice is that their websites, their landing pages, all their collateral, all the stuff talks about how fantastic the product is. And they come to me and they say, what should we change? And I said, well, you don't really talk about anybody who's coming in from the outside, you know, what they're feeling, what they're going through. And it's a very common thing, because when it's your thing, you've got this inside out innovation sort of idea that I'll invent it in here and I'll share it with the world and the world will love it, as opposed to the outside in, which is I'm going to hear what the world wants and tell them I can fulfill their need, whether it's with a widget or an anvil or an aardvark. You know, it doesn't matter as long as they feel they've arrived in the right place. And I find that is also, for mature businesses, doesn't happen that often. A lot, they still go from the inside out. They still think from what my product is and what it does and the benefits and the features. And they really don't have such a firm grasp on what folks on the outside are actually looking for.
No, and you know, Mark, I think where that kind of dovetails is into the conversation, you know, we had yesterday, which is if we go back to the fundamentals of lean, of product market fit, your ideal customer is a collection of people with a common need, problem, inspiration, desire, a driver that somehow are a community that you have access to that are willing to try something new. And so notice that in that ideal customer, your solution is not part of the equation. Because fundamentally, it's not about what you sell. It's the driver that they have. And unless you're Elon Musk, it's the driver you have and the way that they're currently trying to solve it. And what you have to do is you have to insert yourself into that process. As an established marketer, right, your P&G background, yes, you can invent a new category. We all want to do that. But when I have that person that's willing to give me $4 million to just burn it, I will probably just steal it and run instead of trying to create a whole new category that I will then dominate. It's highly inefficient and very, very high failure rate.
Well, yeah, that's the whole thing. Nobody wants to be the next TiVo or the Segway scooter or whatever it is.
Great
you know,
examples.
Yeah, I mean, I would rather just take a disk drive and a music streaming system and put them together.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So where it's really important that we're kind of talking about this now is, you know, kind of as I mentioned, 2020 was an incredible year for digital marketing. It was a major generational shift in a highly compressed time. And we're now in a new world, and there's a couple things happening where we don't realize what's actually going on. Yeah. So, right? So like I talked about, you know, when we were talking yesterday. So one, most important, and this is what we're not talking about, we've had our entire customer base in a pandemic sitting on their phones, using it 2 to 4 times more on average. So they have gone through a generational shift as to how they consume that information. So what normally we have a couple of years, what was innovative in March is really boring by November. And
it's wild, isn't it? I mean, it has the disruption, the shaking loose of the foundations has led to a real flourishing, a disruption, and nobody really knows what's coming, what's going to float and what's going to sink right now.
And where, you know, kind of my prediction is that the difficulty we have is we are not, as digital marketers, talking about it, because last year was also misinformation and Facebook bans and election issues, and now iOS 14 and privacy and all of those things. So all of our data is going through multiple different changes from an algorithm last year, and we're following it going, oh, it's because of, but we're not actually talking about the fact that our customer is now mature. We can't just do a shiny little video with cheap, crappy creative and expect them to actually buy a product. And so, what I've been saying is, please stop calling it e-commerce. It's just retail. And the same way for generations, right? So I went through that as a retailer. We went through that phase. We went through the small independent retailer getting dwarfed by the massive big box. We're everything. And how we competed, how we innovated was we provided a custom experience that the big boxes of the world could not compete at. And so we actually had to start treating our customers as humans again, right? We always did. You always knew the butcher. Then all of a sudden the big box took all that away for a cheaper price. And then for us to innovate, we're like, no, we're going to treat you as a human. And now that's all we have to do online. We actually have to start treating people who visit our website as customers and human beings and talk to them accordingly.
That's funny because I remember from the conversation yesterday, one of the things we talked about was just how shitty advertising is. And, and so we've talked a little bit about, what you do at Socially Affluent, which is essentially you tune up a mature company. You say, what do you know about the people who are coming in? I don't want to talk about your product. I want to talk about the people who are coming in, what they're thinking, where they're hurting, what they've tried before. Have you done this? Do you know how many of them come to you and drop off? Do you know what they're, all the facts and details? So you do that. But now I want to shift gears, and they can always go to Socially Affluent and check it out. And I'm going to CC your name on the show notes so they can click right on you and go deep in this. If somebody out there in the Brand DIY group, you got a mature company or a company that's doing well, and you're worried that you're not doing as well, because every entrepreneur, that's a founder, you're constantly worried. So they can talk to you directly. But I want to shift.
I love poking into other people's businesses, so I'm happy to just have a conversation.
I know you're great. You're great that way. You're awesome. When I first got to meet you, you're very curious and like inquisitive and stuff like that. Anyways, I want to spend the last 5 minutes though talking about the evolution of communication, like business communication, advertising. And when we talked yesterday, I've seen this before. The shittiness that is now this, here's a product, buy it. We've A/B tested it. The product should be this way to the left. The button should be green, not orange, all that crap. I've seen this before a few times. Whenever a new technology comes out, the technologists run the roost for a while. When cinematography came out, films, all they had to do is film a train coming towards the audience, and the audience would just jump out of their seats. They were freaked out, and that was good enough. And then after they'd seen the train a few times, they said, this is boring. I need a story. Same thing when television came out. Same thing when radio came out. Same thing with the internet when it came out. And now we're seeing the same thing happen again, where social media, advertising, and all the technologies that are out there, they're still under the control of the technologists. And we're starting to see that everybody's rising to the same level of technology, which means the creativity and listening to customers and hearing what they want to see is going to rise up again. The art is going to come back, and the mechanic is going to leave a little, and the artist is going to move in, which is what starts to happen with a sort of a mature technology like internet, when websites, television, radio. The storytelling, the art needs to come back. And that's what we were talking about yesterday, I remember.
Well, what's interesting, Mark, is typically where our conversations always start is the customer will say, I need CRO, right? I need conversion rate optimization because I have somehow figured out how to send a bunch of traffic, and usually it's through paid media. My conversion rate is too low. Help me with it. And so what they're looking for is, I read that the green button should be a green button and it shouldn't be square. It should be kind of rectangle with the soft. And that has a 4% increase. And I'm like, whoa, slow your roll. So a friend of mine owns the largest optimization company on the planet, and Google and Walmart are his customers. So he won't tell you any of those stats, because what he will say is, unless you have 1 million visits a month, any testing you do is not statistically significant, right?
Huh.
So if we go back to me, used to own a bicycle store.
Right.
I'm fat as crap. So if I try to improve, I can improve my fitness 50% in 30 days. I'm still slow as dump. Lance Armstrong or some of the others that weren't drugged, they're in fractions of a percentage because they're that good, they're that important. So for people like you and I, and even mature businesses with relatively slow volume, I promise that the reason why your customers or your eyeballs are not buying from you is because you're not speaking to them properly. That's not about conversion rate. That is product market fit. And so how do you take a process where you take a step back and you go, I am going to try 2 or 3 different ways to have a human conversation, and I'm going to see which one has the greatest change in how people perceive my business.
Huh.
Right? And so probably we're at the end. Here's kind of my pitch. Everybody wants more sales.
Yeah.
Sales is not an action, it's a result. It's a result of people coming to your website, looking at your offer, and a percentage of them buying.
Yeah.
That is equal to sales. So when you want more sales, what you're actually trying to figure out is, do I need more people to come to the website? Do I need more people of them to buy? Or do I need to alter my offer? That's it. And so for us at the lower volume, what we're seeing and what we will see is that change has to be rapid iteration and flexibility around conversation with people. That's product market fit.
And that's socially affluent.
That's us.
Yeah. You know what? I think that this is something, I don't care who you are, but this should be on the radar, because to me, it feels like the next evolution. You've been talking to the 25-year-olds who are telling you all about all the new shiny objects that you have to adopt in order to be successful. You've been watching the YouTube trailer ads and recognizing that if you're not doing A, B, or C, you're a complete loser. But it's time to pull back a bit and get back to what we all started out doing, which is just figuring out where it hurts and answering that need. And I think that's an evolved business idea. I think a conversation with your company would be, it would be enlightening and comforting, because it doesn't sound terribly hard.
No, it's not. But you know where the shift has to happen is, we are used to, in the social media world, that organically we engage with our customers, and with paid media, we actually convert those customers. The difficulty we have now with businesses is that the platforms have done a really good job at neutering any kind of active engagement you can have organically. And so it's not cost effective from an entrepreneurial resource to try and figure out how to validate your message with organic content. And so, but as soon as we go paid, people are looking for a return on investment immediately. And where the conversation is, and here it is, hey, for $2,500 in ad spend, how would you like to know which kind of creatives actually work before you start spending 20 grand a month in ads?
Seems like a pretty good proposition.
Not bad. It's not bad.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Well,
Okay,
thank
buddy.
you. I will let you get back to the porn studio and get some work done, for God's sake.
I got to get something done today. All right, Mark.
I'll talk to you later. Kevin Corkum, Socially Affluent. I will make sure to link your name. And
I'm a member of your
can reach
group.
out.
So if
Yeah,
people have
exactly.
some, you know, I'm happy for it to be group conversations as well in the group, because I think we can all benefit from here. Is that, remember that you don't actually know who your customer is, because even if you did know, they are changing, they are adapting. So we have to get into a constant world of, I'm looking for that first date.
I love it.
Okay,
All right,
buddy.
man. Have yourself a good one. Talk to you later.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.